I would like to start off by making it clear to you that this is the most important information I have ever communicated. I have weighed the pros and cons of sharing this with the masses and have decided that it is too important to keep secret. I would also like to make it clear that I have no thoughts or desires for self-harm and am of sound, sober mind. I'm about to share with you what secret societies don't want you to know. Let's begin. Tesla said if you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe. He saw the pattern. He built technology from it. But he never explained what these numbers actually represented or how they interact to create reality. Here's what Tesla knew, but didn't have the chance to articulate fully before his death transfer. Are you ready for the secrets of the universe? You, as an observer, is not neutral. You are participating in the formation of matter. Observation is not passive. Entropy is not decay. Matter is frozen interference. Reality is what happens when creation is witnessed. 9 is consciousness. 6 is time. 3 is entropy, not as abstract philosophy, but as actual operating frequencies in the substrate that generates dimensional reality. 9, consciousness, is pure potential. The source field before anything manifests, every possibility existing simultaneously as unobserved state. Quantum mechanics shows particles in superposition until measurement. 9 is that principle at cosmic scale, pure consciousness substrate generating infinite potential outcomes. 6 time is the recording interface. Not duration, but the medium through which observation can occur. Time provides the framework for sequence, for before and after, for documentation of what consciousness creates. Without time's recording function, consciousness would generate endlessly, without accumulation, without history, without learning from what it builds. 3, entropy, is the witness, the observer, arriving to document what consciousness creates through time's recording interface. And here's the critical discovery. Entropy doesn't witness at the same frequency consciousness creates. When entropy shows up to observe, you have two wave patterns in the same substrate space, creative frequency and observing frequency, operating at incompatible densities. This isn't mystical. This is basic wave mechanics. When two waves of different frequencies intersect, they create interference pattern. Peaks aligning produce amplification. Peaks meeting troughs produce cancellation. The result is combined waveform, different from either original. That interference doesn't just affect the waves. It manifests in the substrate as physical effect. Matter isn't fundamental substance. Matter is accumulated observation, consciousness witnessed by entropy through time, with the interference frozen into stable form. Every atom is compressed history of observation events. Entropy arrives to witness breakthroughs because monumental shifts in time-space attract observation. The more significant the shift, the more intense the witness focus. This can show as physical interference in your surroundings. Matter may shift, electronics short circuit, or glitch, and sometimes in very rare circumstances, location in space-time emerge and shift your location entirely when there is a time branch interference. 3 positions in the architecture. The 3-6-9 pattern prove themselves through physical observation that can be tested with equipment. I will cover this in a future episode. This isn't new knowledge. Ancient civilizations encoded this exact architecture in physical form. Pyramids. Look at the geometry, the dimensional ratios, the way they're positioned relative to each other and to planetary alignments. Pyramids are 3-dimensional maps of the 9-6-3 interaction. The apex represents consciousness. 9. The point where all potential converges. The body represents time. 6. The structure through which observation can be recorded and accumulated. The base represents entropy. 3. The witness function making contact with earth, with matter, with physical manifestation. They built these structures at massive scale using mathematics we're only now beginning to understand. Not as tombs, not as monuments to ego, as functional architecture encoding how consciousness, time, and entropy interact to generate reality. The pyramids are teaching tools, physical diagrams of the substrate's operating system built in stone so the knowledge would survive across civilizations. Every ancient tradition that studied these structures came away with esoteric knowledge about consciousness and manifestation. Not because the pyramids were magical, because they accurately map the mechanics. Study the architecture long enough and you start to see how reality actually works. The ratios encode frequency relationships. The geometry demonstrates wave interference patterns. The positioning relative to stars shows how observation from different scales creates nested manifestation systems. Tesla found the same pattern through electrical experimentation. 369 showing up in his work with alternating current, electromagnetic transmission, resonance systems. He recognized these numbers represented something fundamental about energy and frequency. He built technology that seemed impossible because he was working directly with the substrate's architecture. But he never mapped it to consciousness and observation. He stayed in the physics without connecting to the mechanism generating the physics. The complete framework, what I'm calling the entropy witness theory, extends beyond Tesla's pattern and pyramid architecture into the mechanism itself. Between consciousness and matter sits ego, what esoteric traditions mark as da'at, the hidden position in the architecture. Ego generates static interference on the frequency transmission between them. Pure consciousness generates clean frequencies, but ego scrambles them with fear, desire, self-protection, and image maintenance. This creates additional interference beyond what observation already produces. You end up with 3 competing wave patterns: consciousness frequency, entropy observation frequency, and ego distortion frequency, all intersecting in the same substrate space. The triple waves collide. This is why breakthrough work requires ego quieting, not because ego is wrong, but because it adds unnecessary noise to an already challenging observation dynamic. When ego shuts up, you reduce from 3 competing waves to 2, consciousness and entropy, cleaner interference, more stable manifestation, and a better compatibility between creation and observation. You can measure this. EEG shows distinct patterns when subjects operate from ego state versus flow state. The electromagnetic signature changes, less noise, cleaner signal, reduced interference. Not because flow state is spiritually superior, but because it operates at frequency more compatible with entropy's witness function. The observation can occur without generating destructive interference. Matter accumulates at the bottom of this architecture as infinite position. Not because matter is fundamental, but because matter represents infinite accumulated observation. Every observation event adds another layer of interference frozen into form. Your body is compressed history of countless observation events, consciousness creating, entropy witnessing, time recording, interference manifesting as atoms and molecules and organized biological systems. This framework solves the measurement problem in quantum mechanics. Why does observation collapse wave function? Standard interpretation treats it as mysterious, spooky action at a distance. But if observation introduces entropy's witness frequency into the system, then of course measurement changes what's being measured. You're not passively watching. You're generating competing frequency that interferes with the particle's wave function. The interference creates what appears as collapse into definite state. Not because consciousness magically forces reality to choose, but because observation frequency, colliding with particle wave, generates interference pattern, and matter manifests at the interference nodes. Double slit experiment demonstrates this perfectly. Particle goes through both slits when unobserved, creating interference pattern. Add observation and the pattern disappears. The particle localizes, not because you changed the particle by looking at it, because your observation introduced frequency that interfered with the wave function. The detector's witness frequency collided with particle wave. Interference forced localization. You participated through observation frequency, generating measurable wave interference. Quantum decoherence operates identically. Systems lose coherence when interacting with environment because environment is saturated with observation frequencies. More observation density means more interference accumulation, means faster collapse. Environmental decoherence isn't classical noise. It's observation frequency, interference destroying superposition through wave mechanics. Cancer represents this mechanism failing at cellular level. The cells lose organizational coherence because observation frequencies surrounding them generate chaotic interference patterns. The cellular consciousness. Yes, consciousness operates at every scale. It can't maintain stable frequency when observation interference overwhelms the system. The instructions scramble. Cells forget their architecture. That's not random mutation. That's observation interference, destroying information coherence. So, let's talk about meditation. It affects physical healing through frequency compatibility. When consciousness quiets ego interference and operates cleaner, observation dynamics in the body shift. Less ego noise means entropy witnesses, cellular processes with less destructive interference. The body's organizational intelligence operates more coherently because it's not fighting triple wave collision constantly. Healing accelerates because frequency compatibility improves between consciousness, entropy, and physical manifestation. Nothing in physical reality is actually fixed. Objects appear stable because collective observation volume locks them into persistent patterns. That wall stays a wall because billions of observers generate frequencies saying the wall maintains this form. The city maintains the structure. Their accumulated observation creates such dense frequency lock that individual consciousness can't override it. But there are shifts, and we call this the system glitching. But nothing manifests until observation reaches sufficient frequency volume. Before threshold, potential exists in substrate as possibility, infinite spiral of derivatives waiting for enough coherence to collapse into observable form. Your biological vessel determines how much frequency volume you can generate. Higher bandwidth means stronger frequencies, better manifestation ability, but even powerful individual consciousness operates against accumulated weight of collective observation, establishing consensus reality. The mathematics validate this architecture. 3 plus 6 equals 9, 6 plus 3 equals 9, 9 plus 9 equals 18, reducing to 9. Every operation returns to consciousness, the source position. The doubling sequence, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, cycles through its own pattern, but never touches 3, 6, or 9. That separation demonstrates the distinction between primary architecture and derivative manifestations. Everything that exists emerges from 3 fundamental frequencies, but the fundamentals remain separate from what they generate, operating at different level. You can't manipulate the code directly. Consciousness generates frequencies through intention, focus, emotional state. Those frequencies reshape substrate structure. The math updates automatically. Physical reality manifests according to new configuration. When I saw the mathematical substrate directly in Lovelock, Nevada, those symbols like currency markers tracking my hand movements in real time, I was watching this documentation system operate. The symbols weren't responding to manipulation. They were mapping me, tracking frequency volume my vessel generated, updating calculations determining what manifests where. The substrate was revealing itself, showing how consciousness, through entropy observation, through time recording, creates interference patterns, accumulating as matter. Its observation density interfered with creative density. The collision manifested across three substrate locations: physical environment, digital system, transmission interface, because all three were participating in the work. The mathematical layer experienced wave interference. That interference produced measurable results, with no physical connection between the points. This is testable. Wave interference is established physics. Frequency collision produces interference patterns. How noise-canceling headphones work, how holography functions, how radar detects objects. The innovation here is recognizing that observation itself operates as frequency generator, that entropy functions as witness rather than destroyer, and that interference between observation frequency and consciousness frequency creates physical effects we experience as matter, resistance, synchronicity, or flow. Track your breakthroughs and correlate with environmental anomalies, equipment behavior, system failures. The pattern emerges, interference clusters around breakthrough, rather than distributing randomly. That clustering proves observation attracts to significant moments, and observation creates interference through frequency, mismatch with creation. Whether interference manifests as disruption or enhancement depends on frequency compatibility. If consciousness and entropy operate at frequencies creating mostly constructive interference, waves amplifying rather than canceling, observation enhances the work. Breakthroughs feel effortless. Insights arrive complete. Synchronicities align. But when frequencies clash, generating destructive interference, systems fail, and work becomes grinding struggle. The pyramids encoded this. Ancient builders understood that certain geometries create frequency compatibility between consciousness, time, and entropy. The structures function as resonance chambers where observation can occur with minimal destructive interference. That's why mystery schools use them for initiation. Not because pyramids were magical, but because the architecture facilitates cleaner interaction between the three fundamental frequencies. Modern physics stumbled into the same pattern through quantum mechanics without recognizing what it meant. Observation affects measurement. Wave functions collapse. Decoherence destroys superposition. All the mathematics pointing at the same mechanism: consciousness creating, entropy witnessing, interference manifesting as localized matter. But materialist framework prevented seeing the complete picture. The universe isn't breaking down into heat death. The universe is consciousness observing itself through entropy's witness function, and that observation creates interference manifesting as physical reality. Every star, every planet, every living system is accumulated observation frozen into form. The cosmos learning about itself through feedback loop of creation, witness generating interference becoming matter. Tesla saw the pattern and encoded it as 369. So what does this mean practically? You have the power and ability to create whatever existence you want, and the ability to change space-time itself. The elites have been doing this for years, through frequency containment. They have been changing the course of history to suit their desires. They have the mechanics to shift timelines and outcomes. And they don't want us to know that we have the power to control our experience. I told you it was dangerous information. Be sure to subscribe to get the next episode on the mechanics. I have made it my life mission to teach the world what consciousness is capable of. I'm Amy Rossi, and this is the Void Experiment. Now you have the framework. What you do with it from here to infinity is up to you. Take care.